Questions. We all have them, especially when it comes to God, the Bible, and how it all relates to our lives. We're dedicated to helping you navigate those questions and find truth in a world full of confusion. Welcome to the iAsked podcast. Here are your hosts, Randy Helms and Stephen Hicks.
Hello and welcome to the first episode of the iAsked podcast. My name is Stephen Hicks and I lead the men's ministry here at Gadsden Christian Fellowship in Gadsden, Alabama.
And my name is Randy Helms and I am the associate pastor here at Gadsden Christian Fellowship. We are a church based in, as Stephen said, in Gadsden, Alabama, which is Etowah County, Alabama, northeast of the state. And we are so excited about this podcast. Stephen, you and I have been talking about this for quite a few months, man. And I'm so excited that it's finally here. So tell us a little bit about what this is and what people tuning into right now.
Sure. The idea behind this podcast is relatively simple. Pastors generally do not have the time to unpack and discuss a lot of the ideas, the concerns that their congregates have because they only have an hour or so with their church every week. And of course, obviously, they want to provide the life-changing message of Jesus Christ.
Right.
So that's what they have to discuss. Not that they wouldn't want to dive into the weeds and chase a few rabbits and unpack some of the other ideas. Not that they're not important. It's just that this is a better platform to do that.
Yeah. Well, and that's what really kind of created this idea. We were sitting around, you and I think, we talk a lot and as we're planning, men's ministry things and the various other things that we're involved in. And we were talking about that. Like, man, what about this? And, I've heard this question. Someone asked me this question or I would love to get into this topic. And that's really what birthed the idea of the iAsked podcast. And I know actually there are a lot of churches out there that will do from time to time a series, and they call it different things, but it's kind of the same concept where they allow their church members to ask questions and they'll do a series on that. But even then, there's so much content, there's so many questions, there's so many things that people are thinking and asking, and they want to know that, as you said, Sunday morning just does not really lend the necessary time, or maybe sometimes is not the right place to get into.
Sure.
And here we are, the iAsked podcast.
You and I have had so many discussions. A question will be raised. You and I can pull off to the side and we'll talk about it ad nauseum. And I'll think that was really, really good. I just wish everybody could hear it. So some of the questions that we have gotten have come through the iAsked podcast at gmail.com. So I want to invite our listeners right now, if you have a question, if you have a concern, just something that maybe it's just a curiosity, please send it to us at the iAsked podcast at gmail.com. And Pastor Randy and I will take some time to unpack it.
Absolutely. Email is a great way to do that. We also are on all the social media platforms. So you'll see it on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. You'll see that posted soon and you'll be able to comment right there. Whatever you're thinking, the question. And here's the thing, and this is what I love about it. This is not just for churchgoers. This came out of an idea based upon our church family here at Gadsden Christian Fellowship, or you'll hear us refer to it as GCF. But this is really for everybody. It doesn't matter if you've been serving the Lord and walking with Christ for years, or maybe you're brand new to the faith and you're trying to figure some things out, or maybe you look at all this Jesus stuff and you just think it's ridiculous. And so regardless of the situation, everybody has questions.
Sure.
Everybody. And so we wanted to take this as an opportunity to unpack some of those questions, just dive in a little deeper.
The first episode that we're doing today is sort of a light introduction to the series. We're going to release it on the last Monday of every month. So remember the iAsked podcast on the last Monday of every month. And Pastor Randy, you and I have known each other for 3 years, almost two and a half years, something like that. And something that it's a term that you've used, cultural Christianity. Okay. I like that term. I think it needs to be unpacked a little bit more. Tell us what to expect under that heading of cultural Christianity.
Well, for those of you that, again, this church is located we live in the southeast of the United States of America. And anyone that grew up here probably understands that term a little bit better than someone that maybe lived on the East Coast or West Coast or grew up maybe out in the Midwest somewhere or somewhere else in the world. Cultural Christianity really is kind of this idea or this concept that that culture influences Christianity instead of the other way around. And in fact, I saw just recently someone shared something about this on social media and was talking about how cultural Christianity ultimately is a negative thing. And that's what we're going to unpack over probably the coming episodes. But someone else commented and said, I don't understand. And the way that person was seeing it was they were seeing it as the culture being impacted by Christianity, which is the way that it should be, okay? And not just Christianity as a religion, but as because of our walks with Christ.
Right.
But what we see, particularly in this area where we live, is that this concept or this cultural Christianity, meaning that there are a vast number of people that quote unquote go to church, but they don't really live lives fully dedicated to Jesus Christ. And that's kind of I call it the worst pandemic of our, not just of our lifetime, but really of the world. COVID was one thing, but man, cultural Christianity is killing more people and sending them to hell.
So basically what you're saying then is people who go to church, they think that they are Christian, but being in church no more makes somebody Christian than a car being in a garage.
Absolutely, 100%. Because the reality is that there are so many different churches out there, and especially in our area in the Southeast, there are so many churches, and there's so many different kinds of churches, and so people are attending church, and really in the South particularly. You have someone that gets up every day, they go to work, they work hard, they put in an honest day's work, they provide for their family, maybe their children are involved in sporting events or whatever extracurricular you're thinking about. Their families are busy, they're doing all of the quote unquote American things that we're supposed to do.
Including going to church.
Sunday rolls around, they show up to church on Sunday, they put some money in the offering plate, they shake hands, they grip and grin, they love on everybody.
They go home.
Then they go home and don't give it another thought. And so that is what has helped or not really helped, but has created this cultural Christianity mentality. And a lot of that can go back to, again, just the different kinds of churches in the area. And especially here, there are more denominations than I can even think of.
Boy, I am a transplant to this part of the country from a bigger city. And when I moved in, one of the things I noticed is the proliferation of churches. Like every few miles, there is another church.
Yep.
And it's not just one kind of church. There must be 10 different denominations in this part of the city.
Absolutely. From this church where we're currently sitting right now to my home, which is about 15 minutes away, depending on what route I take, I've done this before because I've counted, I can pass 11 churches between here, including the one we're at now, GCF, to my home, and 11 different churches. And now some people may hear that and go, well, that's not really that big of a deal. But when you think about a small town, it is a big deal.
Sure.
And so then the question becomes, why do all those churches exist? And
some of it is because of Southern culture.
That's exactly right. And so, so it's incredible. So we're going to get into a lot of that over the coming episodes, and especially on episode 1, I'm really excited about. So if you're just hearing this introduction today and you're wondering who are these guys that are sitting here talking to me right now, tune in on the next episode. It'll be the last Monday of this month. It'll go live, and it'll be episode 1, the official episode 1. But we're actually going to unpack the concept and the idea of the denominations and why so many churches exist. So we're gonna dive into that on episode 1.
So you're telling me that if Christianity is one religion, why are there so many different churches?
Absolutely.
Why isn't there just one denomination called Christianity?
That's right. And we're going to talk about that on episode 1, and I'm excited about that. So if you're listening right now to this introduction, be sure and tune in and check that out.
So people out there may be wondering who we are, what we're all about, what gives us the privilege of sitting here behind the microphone.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great question. If you're listening to this and you have no idea who we are, which is pretty much everybody, unless you attend church here. First of all, this podcast was created and dreamt up initially for our church family. Okay. But the beauty of modern technology means that when we release this content, it's going to be available for the world. So we're fully aware that someone may be listening or maybe even watching this podcast and you may be in some other part of the country or possibly even another part of the world, and somehow you've stumbled across this.
Which is what we hope.
Which is what we hope, exactly, because as we said earlier, everybody has questions.
Sure.
I don't believe that there's anybody, and honestly, I'll say this, it's a bold statement, but if you say you don't have questions, I think you're lying. That anyone, regardless of where you are in your walk with Christ, or maybe you don't even believe, maybe you're a self-proclaimed atheist or an agnostic or whatever, everybody has questions.
Okay.
And so that's what the reason this was birthed. So why Stephen and I? Well, for me, I've been in vocational ministry, meaning that this is
what you do for a job.
Right. This is my job also for 10 years. This year actually makes 10 years but I've been in vocational ministry. But for almost another 10 years prior to that, was in ministry, still leading and serving in leadership roles, youth pastor, worship leader, working with children's ministry and all that at a volunteer level. Now, one of the things that I like to talk about is that if you are a follower of Christ, we're in ministry. Everybody's called to ministry. Just because maybe I work at the church doesn't make it really any different what I do versus what you do. So if you're in ministry, if you're a follower of Christ, you are called to ministry. But as far as we are concerned, I have almost 20 years of experience just working in ministry and being, constantly ministering to people, an education through ministry school that really changed my life and gave me what I needed to do this. And then just my personal walk with the Lord. I'm 43 this year, turned 43, and I actually was saved at 23. Okay. And so here we are 20 years into my walk with the Lord, and excited about that. So, Stephen, what qualifies you, my friend?
I'm a little bit older than you are. Sorry to say.
Just a little.
Just a little bit. I'm 13 years older than you, actually. It's not so bad. But my father and my grandfather were both pastors, not of this particular denomination, but my point is I have been in church most of my life, and I've heard, 10,000 sermons. I've dedicated the better part of my adult life to reading the Bible and to understanding what it says. I do have a bachelor's degree from Auburn and a master's degree from the University of Texas, both in history. Now, this isn't Bible history necessarily, but it provides a very strong foundation. Yeah. And I'm also the men's leader here at Gadsden Christian Fellowship, and I teach at the Thrive School of Ministry. Okay, so it's part of my makeup. It's who I am to help bring other people into the church, with a capital C, the Church of Jesus, and doing that by answering questions, teaching as I can, maybe unpacking some of these questions that would just, they've been a hindrance, and I want to get rid of the obstacles.
Well, I think an interesting thing too, to kind of, as you were saying that, Stephen, that I want all of our listeners to understand is that if you notice the difference here, you have one gentleman being Stephen, who has educationally has a completely different background than I do. I have some college, but did not graduate from university. I did, however, again, attend and complete a ministry training school and have their certificates and all of that. And of course, I'm ordained within our church. But different backgrounds here. But here's what I want everybody to hear is that regardless of what your background is, everybody not only has the opportunity, but honestly, if you are a follower of Christ, a responsibility.
That's right.
To educate yourself in the things of the Lord. That doesn't mean you have to go to seminary. It doesn't mean you have to go to college.
Thank you for saying that.
You don't have to get a degree. You don't have to do the same things that we have done, especially in the world that we live in. We are living in a day and age where information is literally at our fingertips. And so there's nothing really holding us back from educating ourselves, and honestly, in today's world, is important if you claim to be a follower of Jesus.
I think people have the responsibility to read the Bible for themselves.
100%.
I think that they need to approach the Bible prayerfully. They need to pray before, during, and after reading, so that the Holy Spirit will tell them what they need to understand from that particular passage. And I think that personal Bible study is critical.
It is. It's very true. So that's what the iAsked podcast is all about. So we're going to we're going to approach some things from our personalities, and really excited about that because I think
me too.
You and I have become really good friends in the last 2.5 years that we have gotten to know each other. In a lot of ways, we also couldn't be two polar opposite of,
but in a good way.
In a good way of people, and I think our personalities go well together, and lend themselves to, I think, what's going to make a great podcast and conversations, and hopefully our people are going to enjoy it.
Amen to that. Remember to send your questions to us via email at the iAskedpodcast@gmail.com. Don't know how many we will get, but we will sort through those. We will pick out the ones that seem to lend themselves to the most audience, that people are most concerned about. We will unpack these with a little bit more time than a pastor is generally afforded on Sunday mornings, and I hope that this will be a success.
Absolutely. Looking forward to the next episode. Episode 1 will drop in just a few days. If you're just now hearing this introduction, or maybe you're tuning in on the first episode, that is amazing. Really excited about that. And until then, we're looking forward to it.
Amen. Pastor Randy, love you, brother.
All right, Stephen. Love you, buddy.
Thanks for listening to the iAsked podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Be sure to follow us on social media under the iAsked podcast, where you can submit your questions. You can also email us at the iAskedpodcast@gmail.com. See you next time.